Just how much more wealthy are people in the US compared to the rest of the world? And what if the individual states of the US were countries in their own right? How would they compare to the rest of the world? In this video, we're going to take a look at per capita income from the Bureau of Economic Analysis and the World Bank, the United States versus the rest of the world. I've read several articles and noticed several videos recently decrying the lack of public transportation in the United States. They look to other parts of the world as examples of transportation utopias, where public transport is within easy reach of the large majority of the population and it's clean and efficient and beloved by its users. I live in the United Kingdom. I've been commuting on public transport for the last 25 years, and it occurs to me that, although all of the points made are perfectly valid and well argued, there is an element which seems to be underappreciated. One reason behind the US having vastly more limited local and intercity public transportation as compared to Europe, for example, is obviously the greater distances in the US making routes less viable. But, to make a huge generalisation, the thrust of the argument as to why the US lacks public transportation services is that Americans love cars and are very hesitant to be parted from them. While this is obviously true, if we dig further and ask why this is the case, it seems to me that it reveals another reason for America's widespread rejection of public transportation. Americans are significantly wealthier than virtually everyone else, and wealthy people own and want to drive cars. I'm using this as an example to shine a light on what seems to be a gap in both American and non-Americans' perception of just how wealthy the people of the United States are compared to the rest of the world. So, per capita income is the national income of the country or region or planet or whatever divided by its population. So basically, it attempts to divine how much income the average person has in a year. There are obviously drawbacks to this metric in terms of extremely high income individuals in a population causing the number to skew higher to an unrepresentative degree. For example, in a country of 100 people, if 99 of them have an income of $10,000 per year and one of them has an income of $1 million annually, the per capita income for the country would be $19,900, an amount almost double that of the income of 99% of the population. However, in terms of global data, this is the best metric we have, and it's also the one used by the World Bank to determine its lending policy. For the purposes of easy comparison, all figures here are in current US dollars and are for year ending 2019, which is the most recent, mostly complete year of data. Let's start with the top level. Here we see the planets in our planetary system compared to the US. The World Bank does not collect data for any planets other than Earth, and so all of these show as zero. Of course, the microbes living in the upper atmosphere of Venus may have an economic system, but, as they purchase vanishingly few consumer goods, nobody has yet bothered to look into it. So, unsurprisingly, the US fares well in this comparison, coming in at nearly 6 times the global average income. So let's go down a level and look at the split by region. And here we see the US top performing again, outperforming the North American region on account of Canada being the only other constituent country of that region, and it's having a lower per capita income of $37,829. As a measure of the imbalance of global per capita income, the United States has 43 times that of the bottom region, Sub-Saharan Africa. Even compared to the Europe and Central Asia region, the US has more than double the income. But let's look at that region in more detail, specifically the European Union. The EU, being a political and economic union of 27 states with a population of around 450 million, makes an interesting subject of comparison with the US, with its 50 states and its population of around 333 million. However, as we can see, per capita income is not even close, with the average American having an income almost double that of the average resident of the European Union. But now we come onto the list of all countries. So, as we scan up to the top of the list, we see that the United States is not, in fact, at the top. Rather, it sits in 5th place, behind Iceland, Luxembourg, Norway, and in 1st place, Switzerland. Of these 4, Luxembourg is the only member of the European Union, though Iceland, Norway, and Switzerland are all members of the EU's single market. Iceland has a very small population of only around 350,000, but brings in a great deal of wealth via tourism. Luxembourg also has a small population of just 638,000, but is one of the global centres of private banking. With a population of around 5.5 million, Norway is still a relatively small country on a global scale, but has huge oil and natural gas reserves which have allowed its government pension fund to become the largest in the world, as of 2017 owning 1.3% of all equities globally, equities being company stocks and shares traded on stock markets. Also a relatively small country in terms of population, with around 8.5 million citizens, Switzerland is at the top of the list due to its economic stability working in concert with a highly technically advanced manufacturing sector and its highly developed finance sector, the country being home to two of the world's top three largest private banking and wealth management firms, UBS and Credit Suisse. But some might argue that comparing these small countries to the US is not representative due to the gulf between their population sizes. So let's instead take a look at how the per capita incomes of individual states of the US compare to the countries of the rest of the world. And as we move up the chart, we can see the values climbing. However, it's not until now that we see the first US state, and as we can see, US states dominate the top positions. 5 states and the District of Columbia occupy the top 6 positions. DC, Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey and California all having higher per capita incomes than Switzerland, the highest ranked country. So why are the residents of DC and these states so well off? In DC's case, it's the US federal government and its vast spending that attracts corporations that employ a lot of high, but not necessarily the highest, income workers. Connecticut is where CEOs and the people who run hedge funds live, especially in Fairfield County. In 2018, 43.4% of people in Massachusetts had at least a bachelor's degree, compared to 35% in the US as a whole, leading to a concentration of higher-paying jobs. New York and New Jersey have New York City and its environs, constituting a huge global corporate and finance hub. And California has a hugely successful agriculture industry, Silicon Valley, and nearly a quarter of the nation's billionaires. In fact, we have to go to position number 14 before we see the second-ranked country of Norway. The US itself sits in 24th place, with 18 of its states and DC above it, and 32 states below it. This is obviously demonstrative of the relative concentration of wealth in the wealthier US states. However, it should be noted that Mississippi, the US state with the lowest per capita income, is only 67th on the list, with only 16 countries having a higher income. It's also interesting to note that many reasonably sized wealthy countries do, in fact, have lower per capita income than Mississippi. Countries such as Canada, the United Kingdom, France and Japan. And Australians, at number 62, have around half the average income of residents of Washington DC. Now obviously this is just one metric, and it's a metric that doesn't account for income inequality across a population, but it does go to demonstrate that the residents of the United States have significantly higher average income than the other countries of the world, which, I would suggest, is why a lot of them don't want to take the bus to work. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Sources are in the description. Check back for more soon, and thanks for watching.